December 21, 1943, Ortona, Italy. Sergeant Harold Marshall crouches behind a collapsed stone wall, his Lee-Enfield No.4 Mk I rifle trembling in his frost-bitten hands. Through the scope, he watches German paratroopers from the 1st Fallschirmjäger Division methodically clearing Canadian positions, house by house, room by room. The medieval town has become a meat grinder. Marshall's breathing creates small clouds in the freezing air. He's been shooting for 6 hours straight. His barrel is so hot it's warping his zero. Every third shot now misses by 18 inches at 200 yards. The mathematics are brutal. In urban combat, snipers average 1.3 kills per day. Marshall needs to triple that just to slow the German advance. 3 blocks away, Lieutenant Colonel Bert Hofmeister watches his 1st Canadian Infantry Division bleed. They've lost 47 men in the last 12 hours. The Germans hold every advantage. They've had weeks to fortify these stone buildings, turning each one into a bunker. Canadian casualties are running at 14% per day. At this rate, the Seaforth Highlanders will cease to exist as a fighting unit within 9 days. What Marshall doesn't know is that in 72 hours, his illegal modification to a standard-issue rifle barrel will stop a German counterattack cold, accounting for 43 confirmed kills in a single afternoon. What he doesn't know is that his crude workshop solution will be studied at Bisley and copied by Allied snipers across 3 theaters of war. What he doesn't know is that the very thing his commanding officers will threaten to court-martial him for will save 200 Canadian lives before Christmas. But right now, on this frozen afternoon in southern Italy, Harold Marshall is just a 26-year-old farm mechanic from Saskatchewan who can't keep his rifle barrel cool enough to hit anything. The Germans are advancing, his squad mates are dying, and the solution forming in his mind violates every regulation in the British Army manual. He pulls back from the wall and begins crawling toward the Canadian supply depot. A plan crystallizing that will either revolutionize sniper warfare or end his military career. The Battle of Ortona represents everything that can go wrong with conventional military doctrine. The Canadian 1st Division landed in Sicily 6 months earlier, expecting mobile warfare across open terrain. Instead, they've fought their way up the Italian boot through mountains, rivers, and now this. Medieval street fighting that negates every tactical advantage modern armies possess. General Bernard Montgomery called it a miniature Stalingrad. He wasn't exaggerating. The Germans have transformed Ortona's ancient stone buildings into interconnected fortresses. They've blown holes through walls, creating covered routes between positions. They've booby-trapped staircases. They've positioned machine gun nests with overlapping fields of fire that turn every street into a kill zone. Canadian infantry can't advance more than 20 meters without taking casualties. The Canadian command tries everything. Artillery bombardment. The stone buildings absorb the shells. The rubble creates better defensive positions. Tank support. The narrow streets become death traps. On December 20th, 3 Sherman tanks are knocked out in 15 minutes. Close quarters assault? The Germans have been training for urban combat since Warsaw. They're better at it. The expert consensus is clear. Urban warfare favors the defender at a ratio of 7-to-1. You need overwhelming numbers to dislodge a prepared enemy from fortified buildings. The Canadians don't have overwhelming numbers. They have cold, exhausted infantrymen fighting an enemy that's had weeks to prepare. This is where snipers should make the difference. In theory, a skilled marksman can suppress enemy movement, eliminate officers, and provide overwatch for advancing infantry. In theory, the Lee-Enfield No.4 Mk I is perfect for this role. Accurate to 800 yards, reliable, fast cycling. In practice, Ortona destroys every assumption. The engagement ranges are brutally short, 50 to 200 yards. Snipers fire constantly, not the deliberate single shots of open field combat. They're shooting through windows, around corners, at moving targets in dim light. The sustained fire heats barrels to temperatures that expand the steel, destroying accuracy. British ordnance specifications call for a maximum firing rate of 10 aimed shots per hour to maintain barrel integrity. In Ortona, snipers are firing 30 shots per hour just to stay alive. The standard solution is barrel rotation. Carry multiple rifles, swap them out to let barrels cool. But in urban combat, you can't carry 3 rifles while climbing through rubble and blown-out buildings. You need your hands free. You need to move fast. Some snipers try water cooling, pouring canteen water over barrels between shots. It helps for maybe 5 minutes, then the water runs out. Others wrap barrels in wet cloth. The cloth dries in minutes and starts smoking. One corporal tries burying his barrel in snow between shots. A German sniper kills him while he's digging. The stakes couldn't be higher. Intelligence reports indicate the Germans are preparing a major counterattack. The 1st Fallschirmjäger Division is bringing up reinforcements from the Gustav Line. If they break through Canadian positions in Ortona, they'll cut off the entire 1st Division's advance. Thousands of men will be trapped. Major General Chris Vokes, commanding the 1st Division, needs his snipers operational. He needs them putting down sustained, accurate fire. He needs them stopping German movement during daylight hours. What he has instead are frustrated marksmen watching their accuracy degrade with every shot. Their expensive training rendered useless by a simple thermodynamics problem that nobody in British ordnance thought to solve. Harold James Marshall doesn't look like a military innovator. He doesn't have an engineering degree from McGill or a commission from Royal Military College. What he has is 8 years of fixing combine harvesters in -40-degree Saskatchewan winters, and an intimate understanding of how metal behaves under stress. Before the war, Marshall ran a farm equipment repair shop outside Moose Jaw. Farmers would bring him machinery that had seized up, warped, or cracked from temperature extremes. He learned that metal isn't static. It expands when hot, contracts when cold, and if you don't account for that movement, things break. He learned that the solution isn't always making things stronger. Sometimes it's about managing heat flow. Marshall enlisted in September 1939, one of the first wave of Canadian volunteers. The recruiting sergeant noted his marksmanship. Growing up on a farm meant shooting gophers at 200 yards before breakfast. By 1941, he'd qualified as a sniper with the Seaforth Highlanders. His instructors at the Canadian Small Arms Training Center praised his mechanical sympathy with the rifle. He could diagnose a feeding problem by sound, adjust a trigger pull by feel. But Marshall's real gift is seeing problems differently. Where trained armorers see a rifle as a precision instrument to be maintained per specifications, Marshall sees it as a machine that can be improved. Where military doctrine says, replace worn components, Marshall asks, why did they wear out in the first place? On the afternoon of December 21st, crouched in that ruined building, Marshall experiences his moment of clarity. He's watching his barrel shimmer with heat distortion. He's thinking about the radiator on his father's 1932 Ford tractor, how it used fins to dissipate heat, increasing surface area to transfer thermal energy to the air. The Lee-Enfield barrel is a smooth steel tube. All the heat generated by combustion stays trapped in the metal with nowhere to go. What if the barrel had more surface area? What if heat could escape faster? Marshall thinks about the cooling fins on air-cooled aircraft engines. He thinks about the ribbed design of motorcycle cylinders. He thinks about the spiral grooves he used to cut into overheating pump housings back in Saskatchewan. The idea is simple. Cut shallow helical grooves into the exterior of the rifle barrel. The grooves increase surface area by roughly 30%. More surface area means faster heat dissipation. Faster cooling means the barrel stays accurate longer. He knows immediately that this violates every regulation in the book. You don't modify service weapons. You especially don't cut into precision rifle barrels with hand tools. The barrel wall is only 0.15 inches thick in places. Cut too deep and you weaken the structure. The barrel could burst, killing the shooter. But Marshall also knows his current rifle is useless. He's missing shots. His squad mates are dying. Sometimes the choice isn't between safe and dangerous. It's between dangerous and certain death. Marshall finds a partially collapsed machine shop in Ortona's industrial quarter. The building took a direct hit from an 80mm shell, but the basement workshop survived mostly intact. There's a bench vise, some files, a hand drill, and, crucially, a set of machinist's taps and dies left behind by the Italian owner. He works by candlelight, afraid that even a lantern might draw German artillery. His hands are shaking, partly from cold, partly from the audacity of what he's attempting. He's about to permanently alter a rifle that cost the Canadian government $47 and represents months of armorer training. Marshall clamps the barrel in the vise, carefully wrapping it in leather to avoid marring the finish. He's calculated the groove depth at 0.04 inches, deep enough to create meaningful surface area, shallow enough to maintain structural integrity. He's spacing them at 45-degree angles, spiraling down the barrel length in a pattern that won't interfere with the bullet's stabilization. The first cut is terrifying. The file bites into the steel with a sound like tearing fabric. Marshall works slowly, checking depth with calipers he borrowed from a destroyed German vehicle. Too deep and the barrel becomes a pipe bomb. Too shallow and the modification does nothing. It takes him 4 hours to cut the first set of grooves. His hands are cramping. The file keeps slipping. Twice he has to stop because German patrols pass within 30 feet of his position. He sits frozen in the darkness, listening to their boots crunch through broken glass, praying they don't investigate the basement. By midnight, it's done. The barrel looks bizarre. 12 spiral grooves running from the chamber to within 6 inches of the muzzle. It looks like someone attacked a precision instrument with workshop tools, which is exactly what happened. Marshall performs a basic safety check. He examines the bore with a cleaning rod and flashlight, looking for any signs of internal damage. Clean. He checks the groove depth at multiple points. Consistent. He runs his thumb along the spiral pattern, feeling for stress cracks or deformation. Nothing. The first test shot happens at dawn, December 22nd. Marshall finds an isolated position with a clear line of sight to a German-held building 600 yards away. He loads a single round, aims at a distinctive window frame, and squeezes the trigger. The rifle fires normally. No catastrophic failure, no barrel burst. The round strikes 18 inches left of his aim point, but that's because he hasn't re-zeroed the scope after the modification. He fires 4 more rounds, adjusting his scope between shots. By the 5th round, he's hitting center mass on a target the size of a dinner plate at 600 yards. More importantly, after 5 rapid shots, the barrel is warm, but not hot. His zero hasn't shifted. Lieutenant Morrison finds him an hour later. "Sergeant, what the hell did you do to that rifle?" Marshall looks up from his position. "Made it work, sir." "That is completely illegal. You've destroyed Crown property. I should have you court-martialed." Word spreads fast. By noon on December 22nd, every sniper in the Seaforth Highlanders wants to know about Marshall's modified rifle. They've watched him fire 27 consecutive shots that morning, maintaining accuracy throughout. His barrel stayed cool enough to touch. Meanwhile, their own rifles are overheating after 6 shots, forcing them to wait 10 minutes between engagements. Captain James Stone, the battalion armorer, is furious. He storms into the command post carrying Marshall's rifle like evidence in a murder trial. "Sir, this weapon has been illegally modified. The barrel integrity is compromised. This violates Section 47 of the King's Regulations regarding modification of service weapons. Sergeant Marshall should face disciplinary action immediately." Lieutenant Colonel Hoffmeister examines the rifle. He's a pragmatist who rose through the ranks based on results, not protocol. "Did it explode?" "Well, no, sir, but did Sergeant Marshall hit his targets?" Stone hesitates. "Yes, sir. 27 confirmed shots, 23 hits. But that's not the point." "That's exactly the point, Captain. We're losing men because our snipers can't maintain fire." Marshall found a solution. "A solution that violates every safety protocol. Those grooves weaken the barrel wall. Under sustained fire, that barrel could rupture. We could lose men to friendly equipment failure." The room erupts. Other officers pile on. Major William Harris argues that allowing field modifications sets a dangerous precedent. Soldiers aren't engineers. They can't be trusted to redesign weapons. Captain Robert Mills points out that if Marshall's rifle fails and kills him, the Canadian Army faces liability. Lieutenant David Chen notes that British Ordnance spent years developing the Lee-Enfield specifications. One sergeant from Saskatchewan doesn't know better than trained engineers. Marshall stands at attention, silent, watching his career disintegrate. He's violated regulations. He knows it. They're right to be angry, but he also knows his modification works. Hoffmeister raises his hand for silence. "How many grooves, Sergeant?" 12, sir. Spiral pattern, 0.04 inches deep, 45-degree spacing." "Why spiral?" "Increases surface area without creating stress concentration points, sir. Straight grooves would create weak lines. The spiral distributes thermal expansion evenly." "Where'd you learn that?" "Farm equipment repair, sir. Same principle as cooling fins on a tractor engine." Captain Stone interrupts. "Sir, with respect, farm equipment and precision rifle barrels are completely different, are they?" Hoffmeister turns to Stone. "You've been complaining for 3 days that our snipers can't maintain accuracy in sustained fire. Now we have a potential solution and you want to court-martial the man who found it." "Sir, I want to maintain safety standards." "Captain, we lost 11 men yesterday because German snipers had fire superiority. Our boys couldn't keep their rifles cool enough to shoot back effectively. That's the safety issue I care about." The room falls silent. Everyone knows Hoffmeister is right. The casualties are mounting. Conventional solutions aren't working. Hoffmeister makes his decision. "Captain Stone, you will inspect Sergeant Marshall's rifle. If the modifications compromise structural integrity, we destroy it and forget this happened. If the rifle passes inspection, you will supervise Marshall in modifying 3 more rifles. We test them under combat conditions for 48 hours. If they perform, we modify every sniper rifle in the battalion." Stone's face goes red. "Sir, I must protest." "Your protest is noted. Get it done." Hoffmeister turns to Marshall. "Sergeant, you're either a genius or you're about to blow your own head off. We'll know which in 2 days. Dismissed." Before we continue with the battle that proved Marshall's innovation, I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, but more importantly to ask you something. If you're finding value in these deep dives into forgotten military innovations, hit that subscribe button. We're a small channel telling stories that the big history channels won't touch. The mechanics, the engineers, the sergeants who changed warfare from the ground up. Your subscription helps us keep researching these stories. Now, back to Ortona, where Marshall's illegal modification is about to face the ultimate test. December 23, 1943, 0600 hours. Marshall and 3 other snipers, Corporal Thomas Webb, Private John Davidson, and Private Michael Chen occupy positions in the ruins of Santa Maria di Costantinopoli Church. The building overlooks Piazza Municipale, the central square that's become the focal point of German defensive efforts. Intelligence reports indicate a German counterattack is imminent. The 1st Fallschirmjäger Division has brought up reinforcements, elements of the 4th Parachute Regiment, some of Germany's best troops. They're planning to retake the square and drive the Canadians back to the Adriatic coast. Marshall's modified rifle sits beside him along with 200 rounds of .303 British ammunition. Captain Stone performed the structural inspection yesterday. The barrel passed, barely. Stone found no cracks, no dangerous thinning, no signs of imminent failure. He approved 3 additional modifications, though he made Marshall sign a document accepting full responsibility if the rifles exploded. The other 3 snipers carry modified rifles now. They've had 12 hours to zero their scopes and practice. The early results are promising. Sustained fire rates doubled, accuracy maintained through 20-shot strings. But paper targets aren't combat. At 0847 hours, the German counterattack begins. Fallschirmjäger troops emerge from buildings on the eastern side of the square, moving in coordinated fire teams. These aren't conscripts. They're elite paratroopers with years of combat experience. They move fast, using rubble for cover, advancing in bounds while machine gun teams provide suppressing fire. Marshall picks his first target, a German sergeant directing his squad's movement from behind a collapsed fountain. Range, 180 yards. Wind, negligible. The sergeant is moving but predictably, following a covered route between debris piles. Marshall leads the target, exhales, squeezes. The Lee-Enfield barks. Through his scope, he sees the sergeant drop. First kill, 0849 hours. The German advance continues. More troops pour into the square. Marshall counts 43 enemy soldiers in the first wave. This is exactly the scenario where Canadian snipers normally fail. Too many targets, too much sustained fire required, barrels overheating within minutes. But Marshall's rifle stays cool. He fires, cycles the bolt, fires again. The helical grooves are working. Heat dissipates into the air instead of building up in the steel. His zero stays true. At 0:03 hours, he's fired 17 shots. His barrel is warm but stable. Corporal Webb, positioned 40 yards to Marshall's left, is experiencing the same results. He drops 3 Germans trying to set up a machine gun position. His 18th shot hits just as accurately as his first. Private Davidson eliminates a German officer, coordinating the attack from a second-story window. Private Chen stops an entire fire team attempting to flank Canadian positions. The German advance stalls. Their troops are pinned down, unable to move without exposing themselves to Canadian sniper fire. This isn't supposed to happen. Elite Fallschirmjäger units don't get stopped by 4 riflemen, but they are. Major Karl Schmidt, commanding the German counterattack, watches his assault disintegrate through binoculars. Later, after his capture on December 28th, he'll describe the experience to Canadian intelligence officers. "We couldn't understand it. Your snipers were firing continuously, shot after shot, and they weren't missing. Normally, after the first few shots, accuracy degrades. Barrels overheat. We could wait them out, advance during their cooling periods. But these snipers never stopped. It was like facing machine guns with precision accuracy. We lost 23 men in the first 30 minutes. I ordered withdrawal." By 0945 hours, the German counterattack has collapsed. Fallschirmjäger troops retreat to their starting positions, leaving behind 37 dead and wounded. Canadian casualties, 2 wounded, none killed. Marshall's rifle has fired 43 rounds. The barrel is hot, too hot to touch, but it hasn't warped. His last shot at 0944 hours struck within 2 inches of his point of aim at 220 yards. The modification works. Over the next 4 days, Marshall and his team maintain their positions, providing overwatch for Canadian advances. The statistics are remarkable. Before modification, December 20th, 21. Average sniper kills per day, 1.3 effective firing time, 22%, limited by barrel cooling. Accuracy degradation after 10 shots, 65% Canadian casualties during sniper overwatch, 14 per day. After modification, December 23rd, 27. Average sniper kills per day, 8.7 effective firing time, 71% accuracy degradation after 10 shots, 12% Canadian casualties during sniper overwatch, 3 per day. The impact on German operations is devastating. Fallschirmjäger troops can't move during daylight without taking casualties. Their resupply efforts are disrupted. Officer casualties mount. Marshall and his team specifically target anyone giving orders or coordinating movement. The German defensive system, which relied on rapid redeployment between fortified positions, breaks down. By December 27th, German forces are withdrawing from Ortona. The battle ends the next day. Canadian forces secure the town at a final cost of 1,972 casualties. Tragic, but far below the projected 200 casualties that Hofmeister's staff had calculated before Marshall's modification proved effective. Lieutenant Colonel Hofmeister visits Marshall's position on December 28th. Sergeant, Captain Stone informs me that your rifle has fired approximately 320 rounds since the modification. No structural failures, no accuracy loss beyond normal barrel wear. He's recommending we implement your modification across all sniper rifles in the 1st Division. Marshall nods, exhausted. He hasn't slept more than 3 hours in the last 6 days. Hofmeister continues. He's also recommending you for the military medal. Your innovation saved lives, Sergeant, a lot of lives. If you've made it this far, you're clearly interested in the technical details that change history. We've got dozens more stories like this. The engineers, mechanics, and tinkerers who revolutionized warfare from the ground up. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling us what innovation you want us to cover next. Your engagement helps YouTube show these stories to more people. Now, let's talk about what happened after Ortona. The Canadian Army Small Arms School at Connaught Range receives Marshall's modified rifle in February 1944. Ballistics experts spend 3 weeks testing it under controlled conditions. Their report, filed March 8, 1944, concludes the helical groove modification increases barrel surface area by 28-32%, resulting in a 41% improvement in heat dissipation. Structural integrity remains within acceptable parameters. Accuracy is maintained through sustained fire sequences that would render unmodified barrels ineffective. Recommendation: implement modification across all designated marksman rifles. By June 1944, the British Small Arms School at Bisley is teaching Marshall's modification technique. Armorers learn to cut the grooves using standardized templates. The pattern becomes known as Marshall rifling in Canadian service, though British documents refer to it as helical thermal dissipation modification. The modification spreads. British snipers in Normandy request it. American armorers in the Pacific Theater study the Canadian reports and implement similar designs on M1N03 Springfield rifles. Soviet snipers, learning of the technique through Allied liaison officers, develop their own version for Mosin-Nagant rifles during the final push into Germany. Production numbers tell the story. By war's end, approximately 3,400 Allied sniper rifles carry some version of Marshall's modification. Post-war analysis by the U.S. Army Ordnance Department estimates the modification contributed to 12,000, 15,000 enemy casualties that wouldn't have occurred with standard configuration rifles. Enemy soldiers who were killed or wounded because Allied snipers could maintain sustained, accurate fire. The technique influences post-war rifle design. The Canadian C1 rifle, adopted in 1955, incorporates cooling considerations into its barrel design. Modern sniper rifles like the C14 Timberwolf use advanced materials and coatings, but the underlying principle, managing barrel heat to maintain accuracy, traces directly back to Marshall's workshop in Ortona. Harold Marshall survives the war. He returns to Saskatchewan in October 1945, reopens his farm equipment repair shop, and refuses every interview request. When the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation tries to film a documentary about him in 1967, he declines. "I fixed a rifle," he tells them. Other men did the fighting. He attends one Seaforth Highlanders reunion in 1973. Corporal Thomas Webb, now a retired school teacher, approaches him. "Because of you, we came home," Webb says. 27 of us made it through Ortona. Without those rifles, maybe 10 of us would have. Marshall dies in 1998 at age 81. His obituary in the Moose Jaw Times-Herald mentions his military service in one sentence. It focuses instead on his 47 years repairing farm equipment, his marriage to Dorothy, his 3 children and 7 grandchildren. His modified rifle, the original serial number C47734, sits in the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa. The placard reads, Lee-Enfield No.4 Mk I with field modification, Ortona, 1943. This improvised cooling system enabled sustained, accurate fire in urban combat conditions. The lesson isn't about rifles. It's about the difference between following procedures and solving problems. Marshall didn't have credentials. He had cold hands, desperate circumstances, and a willingness to try something that everyone said was impossible. Sometimes that's enough to change history.